Is Fort Benning, Georgia actually the most difficult basic training post? So I'm going to try and keep this as unbiased as possible, because for those of you who don't know, for those of you who are new to my channel, I went to Fort Benning for basic training back in the summer of 2015, and I was also a 25 Bravo, which is an IT specialist. So I was not an infantryman going through basic training or one station unit training at Fort Benning, Georgia. So just so you guys know my background on that, I did go to Fort Benning, so I didn't have these other things. But I have talked to a lot of other people who have gone to other posts, whether that's from YouTube or from people that I've met in person, or even my brother who went to Fort Jackson. I've talked to a lot of other people who've gone to other basic training posts. And then even at AIT, whenever you first get to AIT, you're gonna get to communicate with people at, you know, if I went to Fort Benning, I'm gonna talk to other people like, oh, you went to Fort Jackson, oh, you went to, you know, Fort Leonard Wood. And you're gonna be able to talk with them and be like, oh, we didn't do that, you did that, we didn't get to do that. And you're gonna be having these conversations, right? But the question here is Fort Benning, Georgia actually the most difficult basic training post that you can go to? I'm gonna start this video off by saying that there is one part of Fort Benning that is without a doubt one of the most difficult parts of basic training in comparison to the other basic training posts, and that is 30th AG, which is the reception battalion over at Fort Benning, Georgia. 30th AG. If you're going to basic training at Fort Benning, you're going to go to this place called 30th AG, and it is going to suck. They're going to take your phone immediately. They're going to treat you like crap. It's just going to be a really bad time. And at other, you know, basic training posts, you get to keep your phone through reception, which I think is crazy how they will take it at Benning and then they let you have it at Fort Jackson, for example, which just kind of makes no sense to me, right? If you go to basic training at Fort Benning, that is a part of it that is just definitely going to be a worse time than at any other basic training post. Now, that's not necessarily saying that it's harder, but you are going to have your phone taken away, whereas at other places it won't be taken away, and then you're going to be treated a lot more like crap. Like, you just, the people that work at reception at 30th AG, they just treat you like dirt. Like, they're not even like drill sergeants or anything like that. The drill sergeants actually treat you much better than the actual personnel who work there. Like, they just treat you like really bad. And obviously whenever you're at reception, you're not going to get smoked by the drill sergeant, so maybe the drill sergeants would, you know, be a lot worse, right? But just the people and the environment is just way worse at Fort Benning for reception than anywhere else. One of the reasons why this topic gets brought up a lot, or people ask me this question a lot, is, you know, hey, I'm going to Fort Benning, is it going to be, you know, the same training as other places? Or I'm going to Fort Leonard Wood, is it going to be the same training as other basic training posts? And basic training across the board should be the same no matter what post you go to, no matter what cycle you're in, no matter what company you're in, no matter what platoon you're in. You are supposed to do the same training. And the reason I'm saying supposed to is some of the things your company might not actually get around to doing. There might be, and it's just small things. So like, you know, maybe you're supposed to do combatives a couple extra times. Well, they might just kind of like ignore that one. You know, if you're supposed to do it 4 times, they might just ignore it 1 time. You'll only do it 3 times. You know, certain little things like that, they may kind of bend the rules just a little bit, but for the most part, 99% of all the basic training events, the things that you're going to go through at all of the posts for basic training are going to be the same. That being said, there are going to be cases where Fort Benning is going to be way more difficult than other basic training posts, and just as likely other basic training posts, Fort Jackson for example, a lot of people are going to go to Fort Jackson and they're going to have a tougher, more difficult time at basic training than another person who went to Fort Benning. And why is that? Why would that be the case? Why would 2 basic training cycles be more difficult than another cycle? And the reason being is you're gonna have different drill sergeants. That's the big key factor, the big question mark, the big variable in all of this is your drill sergeants. You know, you could go to basic training at Fort Benning and you could just, you know, ease on through and it'd be super, super simple. You could also go to basic training at Fort Benning and it's going to be extremely difficult in comparison to other cycles that have gone before you or other basic training companies. And it's all gonna come down to your drill sergeants and your company commander. Reason being, some drill sergeants will want to be really hard and they're going to be really strict on you, and they're, you know, even though you're supposed to have a phone call 3 times at basic training at the end of each phase, they might be like, no, you're not going to get a phone call. You might only get like 1 phone call, whereas you're supposed to get 3. But you know, that can vary because of the drill sergeant. You could have, you know, again, phone call example, you could just have 5-minute phone calls, whereas another drill sergeant will let you have 2-hour phone calls. You could be smoked a whole lot more by your drill sergeant just every day throughout entire basic training, right? So for the most part, the majority of the smoking is going to happen in red phase, which is the first 3 weeks of basic training. After that, it's going to kind of tamper, or, you know, go down a little bit. You're still going to get smoked on a fairly regular basis. And by smoked, I mean basically your drill sergeants, you know, tell you to, you know, half right face, front leaning rest position, move, and you're going to drop and do some push-ups. You're going to do some exercise and stuff like that. So that's going to kind of drop off a little bit throughout basic training, but there may be some drill sergeants out there who just want to smoke you the entire time like you're in red phase. There might be some drill sergeants who will, you know, once you get to white phase, once you get to blue phase, they might be like, oh, y'all did really bad today. We're gonna move y'all back to red phase. Now, you're not necessarily going to be recycled back to red phase, but they're going to basically take the blue phase away from you and put you into red phase, and then they're going to use that as an excuse to smoke you more, to, you know, give you less time eating and certain things like that. And those things will just make basic training a little bit more difficult. And, you know, like I said before, the events, the training that you are supposed to do is going to be the same. 99 point, you know, whatever percent or whatever the percentage is, it's going to be the same training. The variable here is your drill sergeants. Now, overall, in a broad spectrum, is basic training really the more difficult one? And I would have to lean towards the side of yes. The reason being is the drill sergeants at basic training, whether it's going to be infantry or another, you know, MOS, a support MOS is going through basic training at Fort Benning. The reason it might be a little bit more difficult as a whole, and again, yes, a Fort Jackson basic training cycle could be more difficult than a Fort Benning basic training cycle, but at Fort Benning, the drill sergeants feel like they have this reputation to uphold. Like, I really feel like for them, I remember them talking about this a little bit, kind of, or insinuating this, so like, hey, this is Fort Benning, like, you're supposed to get, you know, smoked more, kind of thing. So at Benning, they kind of have this reputation, they kind of have this, you know, thing that they feel like they have to do to make Fort Benning more difficult by smoking you more, by being more strict, by not giving you as many privileges that you're going to have at other places. And that is kind of the trend that makes basic training at Fort Benning more difficult, or the harder basic training post. Because of the fact that for the most part, right, at Fort Benning there's going to be stricter rules. You might be getting smoked more on average than other basic training companies, or other basic training posts, I mean. Once you get to AIT, right? When you get to AIT, you leave basic training, no matter what basic training post you're at, you're going to go to AIT. You're going to be with other soldiers arriving for the first time who are from different basic training posts. And this is not coming from me. This is not coming from me because I went to Fort Benning. This is not coming from me. But as a whole, my platoon sergeants and the other platoon sergeants there and NCOs that have been at AIT who are instructing and stuff said, can see, and I kind of saw myself, the soldiers coming from Fort Benning were a little bit more disciplined and organized and, you know, militarized, I guess, than other basic training posts. So like, for example, the guys that I went to Fort Benning with for basic training that were in my company, once we went to AIT, there was like, I don't know, 5 or 6 of us that went to the same AIT company. We were more I guess, like, I want to say like strict, more disciplined than some of the other soldiers who came from different basic training posts. And again, this is not me saying this. This is something that, for example, my platoon sergeant, I'm not going to say names or anything, but my platoon sergeant saying, like, it is pretty obvious that he said you can pick out soldiers, say this soldier went to basic training at Fort Benning, oh, this soldier didn't. And that's kind of the scenario there. Either you went to Fort Benning or you didn't. And there's kind of a discipline difference that you might have whenever you arrive to AIT. You might be able to witness that. Now, again, I'm not saying that this is going to be the case for every single basic training company, every single cycle that goes through Fort Benning. I'm not saying that that is going to be more difficult every single time than other basic training posts. So if you go to Fort Sill, you know, your training could be more difficult. You could have more difficult drill sergeants that are more strict than anything at any other post going on, right? You could just have that drill sergeant who wants to do that. You could have a drill sergeant who is at a different basic training post at Fort Benning, and he's like, oh, I'm going to show these Fort Benning drill sergeants that I'm going to make my basic training company, my cycle, be the most difficult one around. Like, that could totally happen. And because of that, those soldiers in that company are going to be, they're going to gain more discipline. They're going to be more militarized than some of the other soldiers that might be at a basic training company at another post. So I know I went on for a little while on this. I actually went much longer than I thought, but the general thing that I want to get across to you guys here is when you go to basic training, no matter what post you go to, it really just depends on your drill sergeants that you have for your platoon, as well as your company commander, right? That is going to be the big variable for how difficult your basic training experience is going to be. It's not necessarily only Fort Benning that is just the toughest. Fort Jackson, relaxing Jackson, is not always going to be, you know, relaxing. You're not always going to be have an easier experience than soldiers that are going to Fort Benning. So I just wanted to let you guys know that and answer a question that people have asked me a few times. So there's the answer. So if you guys enjoyed this video, you can hit that like button, and if you want to stick around for some more of my videos, you can hit that subscribe button. That would be even better. If you have any comments, questions, or concerns, the comment section is down below, as well as you can follow me on my social medias, which are right here. So at WardM89, you can follow me there. I hope you guys have a great day, and I will see you guys later.